Sorry.
Hi.
Let me just go live. I think we're waiting for Brian from CDM, right?
He's not one of the people online.
Oh, now you talk.
The light's on.
It did stop.
It's not by me.
Brian Porter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you presenting or is Brian presenting?
I'm presenting. Brian's going to be, if someone happens to ask really detailed questions, then I'll chime in. Or if I say something wrong, then I told him to interrupt me.
On YouTube.
What's that, Brian?
Exactly. They archive right after the meeting on Zoom. So.
Yeah, I mean, we have the recordings on Zoom. And then, but they go you have to open request them from Zoom. Well, from us to get off of Zoom, but we do the Facebook Live. Like right now, this is on Facebook Live.
So like tomorrow.
On our Facebook page, yeah. All right, so we are on here. Let me just make sure that we're good as far as audio goes. Yep. So thank you guys for joining us today for the water and sewer rate informational session. This was brought out of the April 2023 water rate and sewer look into our capital improvement plan for our water and sewer system. It was authorized at that time in April 2023 to review where our current rate structure was, the history of our rate structure, and what recommendations would be made for our rate structure. It has been some time. I don't have the historical knowledge of when the water rates were raised in the borough, but I understand it has been a significant amount of time as far as fiscal planning goes for our water and sewer infrastructure, going on around 10 years at this point. So I'm joined today by our CFO, Tom Seaman, our tax collector, Ashleisha, Jacqueline Floor, who's with Ingenuity, our water and sewer engineer, Steve from CDM Smith. And I know that as a panelist on our Zoom meeting today, we have Brian Porter as well. And just for everybody in the audience, we do have our deputy mayor and Kate Trigano and Councilman Ben Forrest. So we are live streaming this, recording this, and we'll make this available to anybody who would like to view it. And it can be viewed on our Facebook page as well. So yeah, we're going to get right into the presentation just so we do have some time for if anybody tunes in with us on. I know we have a couple of Zoom attendees. If anybody has any questions or just wants some more information about our water and sewer capital improvement plan and its intended and anticipated effect on our water rates, water and sewer rates, and looking at that timeline, what that's going to look like for everybody in the public, and understanding that mayor and council will have to either take some action or not with regard to the water and sewer rates. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Jacqueline Floor to start our presentation, and I'm going to share that as well.
All right, I just wait for the presentation to go live.
It just has like a 3-second delay, so.
All right, perfect. All right, so today we're here to talk about the water and sewer rate study. If you go to the next slide, we're going to start with going through the capital improvement plan and how that relates to the water rate study. And then I'm going to turn it over to CDM Smith to talk about the study and the current rates and the current rate structure. We'll talk a little bit about financial projections and then the recommended solution, which of course is just recommended at this time. There's a council meeting next week where the council can determine whether or not they're going to take action on those rates. And then opening it up for discussion, because I'm sure there's going to be questions. This is going to be a very number intense presentation. It's not one of the presentations. You're going to have a lot of pictures. It's going to be mostly numbers. So I think that there's going to be a lot of questions because this is really about the numbers. So next slide, a little bit about a capital improvement plan for the purposes of the water rate study. We did a 10-year capital improvement plan. Why this is important is the maintenance and integrity of your water and sewer is important to the public health and the customers, which are the Red Bank residents and the businesses here in Red Bank. It's important because it looks at all of your water and sewer infrastructure so that you can maintain safe and reliable service. And when we start to talk through this infrastructure and what these rates cover, I think it will start to make a little bit more sense. But it's critical to public health that you have an active functioning water and sewer system. So, making sure that that's fiscally sound is of critical importance. And the borough has done a great job in doing that. And as I think Jim mentioned, it was around 2018, I think, that the rates were last raised. It's been almost 10 years. If you think about everything that's gone up in the last 10 years, think about even your grocery bills, everything. Inflation has raised everything. And so every piece of infrastructure that these water and sewer rates cover has gone up in cost. So even the price of buying chemicals, everything from salaries to pay for the people that work at the Department of Utilities that maintain the water and sewer, all of those things have gone up. But what hasn't gone up is your water and sewer rates. So that is why, we did a full capital improvement plan and looked at the next 10 years. And in doing so, we met with everybody from the CFO, Ashleisha. We talked to your DPU, we talked to Terrence, Bobby Holiday. We went through every single piece of infrastructure. We have a full capital improvement plan. We're going to make sure that the mayor and council have that to go through it and read it. We tried to write it at a level that was not for engineers. We really have it where there's a picture for everything so that you can break it down so that anyone could read it and understand it. We did that on purpose because we want everybody to understand it. And we also want you to understand what you're already doing every year to maintain this system and what that's cost in the past and what that's projected to cost in the future. And some of it goes up for no reason other than the fact that salaries and the cost of supplies has gone up. And other things are recommended, things that we know you're going to have to do, whether it's legislated that you have to do it, such as you have to replace, or at least identify and determine how you're going to deal with lead service line replacements, to your pump stations and your generators and your wells that have to have maintenance on certain cycles. So we're going to cover, all of that's covered in your capital improvement plan. So,
And I know just anecdotally, the cost of chemicals to treat water has significantly increased in the last few years.
yes. So basically the capital improvement plan goes through that in a lot of detail. It's a very thick plan. So rather than go through each page of it tonight, we're going to provide that to you. But just to give you examples of what your water and sewer infrastructure are, and you can see it on the slides up there. You have 2 water treatment plants. You have 4 wells. You have water mains. You have water purchases that you purchase from New Jersey American Water for part of the year. That's required by DEP. You have lead service line replacements. You have hydrants. You have 8 sanitary lift stations. You have sewer manholes that you line, make sure you don't have any infiltration into your system. You have sewer mains and you have pumps and generators. So how that relates to the capital improvement plan, if you go to the next, how the capital improvement plan relates to your water and sewer rates is that we had meetings with every single one of the entities here in the borough that maintains those facilities. We also reached out, you have a pool of special projects engineers. We had meetings with each of those special projects engineers to see, this lift station, we're seeing that this is happening with this lift station after meeting with DPU. We're recommending that it be replaced on this cycle, but we didn't just do that in a vacuum. We met with every one of those special projects engineers. We met with Bobby Holliday, Terrence, and got a full understanding. And then we have a schedule in the capital improvement plan on when we expect those improvements to happen. We know that every time you do a road program, you also look at your water and sewer, which makes sense, because if you do a road program, you don't want to come back and rip that up. In that program, if your water mains are less than 8 inches, if they're 6-inch water mains, we know that the age of those are like 70 years. So we know that whenever you encounter those, that you upgrade them. And so those costs are all in this plan. So those are the things that basically we looked at to 2033. And then we gave that data to CDM Smith, who has a whole division that does nothing but analyze rates and look at how those rates fall and whether or not you're going to have a surplus or you're going to have a deficit. We also met with Tom to understand how the borough deals with a surplus or how they deal with a deficit. We have Tom here so that he can, answer any questions that come up. But it's a positive thing if you have a surplus, because it can, what I learned from Tom is how that's a positive thing. If you have a surplus, you can transfer that to your general fund in order to deal with tax increases and make sure that you can offset that. So, a healthy water and sewer rate is vital to how this borough functions and has always been that way. So basically overall, the capital improvement plan, that's what it focuses on. It focuses on maintaining, upgrading, and repairing the water and sewer infrastructure. It also considers compliance with state and federal regulations. There's rules on when you have to do certain maintenance on your wells and, rules with what you have to replace. And then it also replaces aging components and anticipates the future challenges so that you can keep up with this essential service. So I'm going to turn it over to Steve to basically talk through the projections and your current rates and what that looks like.
Thanks, Jacqueline. So first, an introduction to the rate study. I know the CIP was for the 10 years, but we took the 5 years for the revenue requirements. The only thing we're taking from there is what's the target? How much revenue do we need to account for? And then split it up by year. Next was evaluation of the rate adjustment. So whatever current level you're at, what would be the increase and when would that come? There's certain strategies would be to smooth it out so it's not a huge increase one year and then nothing later. A consistent increase is usually easier to plan for budgeting, for household budgeting. Next slide. So the current rate structure, the water and sewer rate structure in Red Bank combines water and sewer. There's a component for a fixed charge, which accounts for, it's paid by all customers, and it varies by the meter size. So the difference between a 5/8 and a 3/4 for a customer is the same, but for a business, 1 inch or a 2 inch might be different. This fixed charge covers routine maintenance, upkeep, that type of stuff. And then there's a consumption charge where the more water you use, the more money you pay. So you'll see this HCF throughout this presentation. That's 100 cubic feet, which is kind of awkward. Some places do it by gallon, but that's what we have. So the current water rate is $5.32 per 100 cubic feet. Next slide. So these are some of the projection assumptions. So we have use these as a starting point for the rate study. We use the 2024 budget projections for our analysis. I think we were given these in 2023, so that's why projections.
But we've since updated this.
And we've
yeah.
updated a couple times actually, yeah. Projections show on the combined rate basis that we just talked about, that combines water and sewer instead of separate. The FY is fiscal year, so the fiscal year 2024 increase is assumed to take place July 1st, 2024. But future years will assume to be January 1. So when projecting it out, we have basically half a year to collect revenue in 2024. Every year after that will be the full 12 months.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So because of the lack of increase in the water rate, we're left with now being at a point where we'd have to use half of our surplus this year to make up for that lack of increase. Is that correct?
No, we would take the full, what we're trying to spend and then project it to smooth it out. So it's not like jamming something into 6 months. It'll be over the full duration of whatever we set the end. So the end will probably be July 1st, 2029, as opposed to, did we stop it for 2029 in December or in July? Brian, do you know that?
Yeah, so it would be the 2029 would be through December. So when we're looking at the 24 increase, as part of these projections, it would assume the half year, but then it would be revenue for the full year for each of the fiscal years after that.
Just seems unsustainable.
Yeah, that's where the numbers get played with kind of, and you'll see that later.
Right.
All right, just as a reference point, 2023 rate revenues were 6.7 million. And the surplus from the end of 2023, therefore the start of 2024 was 2.0 million. And then the 2024 projection with no increase, so as in the baseline scenario, projects 1 million, 1.0 million use of the surplus. Slide.
So we're losing money now.
If we stick with the baseline, since as Jacqueline mentioned, the increased costs across the board for absolutely everything, when the collection rate stays the same, you're eating away at what you have.
If we kept going the way they had been going without any increase for a whole decade. It's not
Yes,
sustainable.
yeah,
Right.
which honestly, it's even surprising that you made it a decade and you're not underwater right now. Oh,
I got it too.
So like, if we just kept it the way it is now, this is the Councilman Forrest speaking, ask a question. We would probably be, and we'd actually have to put money in 2025.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's make sure.
Which is with a utility.
How
which
do you
is-
put it in? Yeah,
Right,
You
which is
have
what this
to,
budget is, you can't,
you have to have a higher increase of rates.
you can't
to
fund a
get the
utility.
additional- Yeah, because utilities are
I
considered,
wouldn't want to, I'm just saying.
Right.
right, so
Right, but obviously we would not.
I'm just saying from a municipal budgeting standpoint, the utility has to be self-liquidating.
it's self-liquidating, so it's on its own. It has nothing to do with taxes. So in effect, the rate is what's going to support the operation.
Got it.
And the excess of not spending the budget, things like that, or excess revenues will help the surplus, but we're projecting that that's gonna be declining, so we need to get ahead of that.
Got
So
it.
we'll be supporting, especially all the projects we're gonna be doing. And we're doing some wonderful projects. I mean, the lead line project is great for the town and needs to be done. But that has to be paid for, even though we're getting some aid with the bank and things like that. So we gotta get ahead of this before we get in trouble. We don't wanna have a deficit in operations.
So are these slides gonna be available after the meeting?
Sure,
So I don't have to get them.
absolutely.
oh yeah, you don't have. usually. All right, so here's the aforementioned lots of numbers. I don't think we're gonna run through and for me to read off every single number. It's just, maybe I'll go through the overview.
I think it's important for you to just say what it is.
What it is,
Yeah.
okay, so it's just, each column is just a year, so I don't have to go through the columns, but. Going through the rows, operating expenses, they cover repairing pipes that broke, manhole, I don't, just everyday operations from day to day that are expected. Existing debt is the interest paid on what you're borrowing now. So loans taken out, they could be low interest loans through the state revolving fund. They could be private loans. I don't know your finances that well, but like that's where that's coming from. The anticipated debt service is the projected what we expect to be borrowed and paid in interest
Based on our.
based on the
CIP.
CIP. So you're paying for all the things that Jacqueline named. The cash funded capital is. Brian,
Sure, the cash funded capital represents capital projects that the borough wouldn't be borrowing for. So that would just be paid directly through rate revenue each year. Whereas the debt service would be the principal and interest payments on borrowings that the borough would be anticipating.
thank you. The general fund is what Jacqueline alluded to, where it's nice to offset tax increases, the ability to use that. Miscellaneous revenue, Brian,
And these represent things like interest on investments, connection fees, things that are outside of the retail rates that we're looking at. So it sort of applies as a reduction to the total rate revenue requirement that's projected over the 5-year period.
and then if you take the total, notice that the miscellaneous is a revenue, so it's a negative in this context. And then the bottom, second to bottom line is the total revenue requirement. So it's the sum of all the rows less the miscellaneous revenue. And that's the number per year that we're required to like plan for. The last line shows the annual revenue requirement increase prior to surplus utilization. It's basically the increase over the previous year. So if you take the 8.5 in 2025 minus the 7.6 in 2024, it's the percent increase. I guess the CIP came up with a $25 million estimate over the 5 years. So that's what the highlighted thing at the bottom is. It's not highlighted there. And then the 1.0 million shortfall in 2024 under the if rates are not changed. This is just this is a bar graph to show. It basically will summarize what we just talked about, but in a nice to look at. The green line is the current revenue. So if the rates stayed the same, that's where we would land. Notice it does not cover the bars. So
Right, we're seeing that blue, that operating, right, that
Yeah.
salary, those chemicals, those fixes, those repairs to our
Water
system,
charges.
the water charges from American Water. We're seeing the blue getting closer to the green. And then obviously the blue surpasses the green, which we're trying to maintain where we're looking more like 2024 than we are at 2029.
yeah, and it also has to cover the orange, which is another additional expense for.
Right, and the
That-
orange is that necessary improvements that have to be done to our water system.
So you mentioned that American Water's rates have gone up. What are we talking about? How much have they been increasing their rates?
I don't know if they're increasing the rates. It might be, our usage might be a little higher. I just noticed that in the last year, we had some bigger bills. And it's through, we pay, it's called Manasquan, but I guess it's American Water Company. And then we have our sewer bill we have to pay also. And that went up last year. They had some infrastructure issues with the Monmouth County Improvement Authority. No, I'm sorry, Monmouth Beach. Is it,
Right.
Two Rivers,
Rivers.
Two Rivers Water Reclamation. They had an increase also. So we just have to keep up with that.
But these are things that are out of our control.
Yeah.
Right? So,
It's kind of like school taxes. We have no control of.
I think now's a good time to say why it's important that the borough owns and maintains our water system, because we have control over that. You know, we have control over what those rates look like. We have control over what those capital projects look like. When you go out to a third party and basically sell it off, you lack all control at that point. You're at the mercy of the third party that's going to be driving those rates, that's going to be telling the water users and people that flush their toilets what they're paying. So I think it's important that we do these exercises like this, because we're the ones that answer directly to our constituents. We're the ones that, you know, are representatives of our constituents. Therefore, we have to be ones that are most cognizant about what rates we're charging people. And doing it with the idea that this plan is a necessary plan, and those rates have to drive the necessary plan and nothing else.
And that will help us in the long run. We'll have control over it. Hopefully it'll be efficient, be self-liquidating like it's supposed to. And then hopefully if there's some, not fluff, but a little excess or whatever, that could help support our operations on the current side.
I mean, for example, right, there's certain salaries in the borough. This is just one part of operating that come out of that water sewer fund, that utility as well. Myself, right, as borough manager, oversees the water utility fund as well. Tom's.
Yes.
Tom works on the water utility fund every day. So without that utility, we would have no ability to split up even salaries that certain employees work here have. Therefore, all of that would go to the general fund, and all of that would be taxpayer funded. Sorry, I didn't mean to say,
No.
of course, sir.
That's what we're here for. We're supposed to
No, I
talk
think it's
through
important
it.
that you said all that, because with the people that be watching this in the past and the future, or people that live in the town, a lot of people don't know that the borough owns its utility. And how unique that is, and that should not be an assumed no, ever.
And it's not a negative thing either. It's a good thing.
It's an incredible thing that we own our utility. Like I'm just saying, it's just not, we can't assume that people know that. Ever.
Point. All right, I think you can go to the next slide. We'll get into the weeds a little bit here with how we calculated the baseline, which is the one that will fall short. And then we came up with we tried to come up with 4 ways to not fall short, but we ended up with 3 ways that don't fall short, and one of them does. So so the first is the baseline is the annual rate increases for the projected rate revenue to cover the revenue requirements. So we're just trying to cover. I'll call it alternative 1, which is case 2, is an equal annual rate increase. So for the next 5 years, there would be a set constant number increase. This was done assuming the target of an $800,000 surplus, which is the equivalent of 30 days of operating expenses. So if you took the operating number that we had in the previous slide and divided it by since it was by year, divided by 12, that would be where the month roughly fits 30 days. That's where that number. The next alternative were smooth rates, also targeting the 800,000 surplus. The benefit of this is it balances out and mitigates rate spikes. So there's no really sharp increase one year, then almost nothing the next year. And it's easier for people to plan budget wise. The next alternative is a fixed charge increase. So that fixed rate that we talked about, as opposed to consumption rate, would be increased only, no consumption rate increase. It would happen in 2024 only. And again, we would target the 800,000. And the last option we looked into was smooth rates targeting a 1.6 million surplus. Again, this mitigates rate spikes, so it smooths everything out and the target of the 1.6 would be sitting there at the end of fiscal year 2029. So let's go to the next one. These are what the rate increases would look like number wise of what the words in the previous slide were. So a baseline increase where we only increase it this year would result in a 30% increase, which I don't think is very attractive to very many people.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, no one, that's just the baseline to compare the good alternatives to. Number two ended up not being feasible because it doesn't hit the target revenue. So we kind of threw that out. The number three, which as you can see is the recommended alternative, smooths it out and then trails off. So it's starts at 9.5, continues 9.5 for 2025, but then it starts to trail off. And by 2028 and 2029, it's only a 2% increase per year, which just as a perspective thing is less than anticipated inflation.
Would you like me to give some examples with that? What it would do for different, some different properties? Ashley and I this afternoon went over two properties. Somebody with 18,000 gallons, is it period? That's for the period, right? Or for the
quarter.
the quarter, they would increase by $32. But somebody average of 7,000 in a quarter, the increase would be like $14.
Ashley, so what do you see as being the average usage for the borough? If I'm putting you on the spot with that question, but is that 7,000 more average than the 14,000?
It would be in between, I would say.
Maybe 10,000 or so.
Yes.
So the increase would be in the maybe $20 a quarter.
$20 a quarter with this third option.
Yes.
That we're looking at as our recommended alternative.
Yes.
In other words, if this is an example of somebody is paying about $350 a quarter, they would pay about $32 extra per quarter if their average stays the same.
That's almost 19,000 gallons. That's the higher one.
Yes.
So
Obviously, this is based on the amount of usage, so if you use less water,
oh yeah,
pay less.
Yep.
Use more, opposite, okay.
And they would have that increase again the following year
Right, before it trails off.
before it trails off. Just to be clear, just so no one thinks it's just once.
Right.
So you're right, 2024, 2025 would look virtually the same. And then 26, 27 to 29 starts to trail down. And at the same time, we're accomplishing $25 million in capital improvements to our infrastructure.
And remaining in control of your own fate.
Remaining in control of your own fate, maintaining the 30-day operating surplus.
And I do encourage like the reading of the CIP, because I think when you see some of the things that are projected to need to be replaced, you're going to see they're important things that you're going to want to replace. You know, and so I do encourage and try and get people to read it.
Yeah.
I think it's a positive plan,
The CIP is what exactly again?
capital improvement plan,
Yeah.
so that you understand, well, these are my lift stations. Oh, that one, this is what's going on with that lift station for sanitary. So, you know, reading through it and understanding the system, it's everything that you own in terms of water and sewer.
And just to round out the options, they aren't selected, but I'll run through them. The fixed charge, which is a huge increase of 45% on the fixed spot, which was roughly $44, I think. But then a relatively smooth usage charge, volumetric charge, but it's the usage. And the last one would be targeting a larger surplus of the 1.6, which we didn't select, but it would also follow the similar structure as option 3, the smooth rates. It's just that years 2028 and 2029 are higher because we're targeting more surplus. So. Okay, so this was actually the impact on a bill, which I believe Tom already mentioned, the 74, and this is 100 cubic feet. So that's awkward, but it roughly would come out to be the 10,000 gallons per year or per quarter. No, it's $10,000 gallons per quarter. So 40,000 gallons per year. I don't think there's a great reason to run through every single number. This just,
So let's look at option 3 real quick.
Yeah.
And because we did say 10,000 may be that average bill that we're looking at. So if you could just focus on 3 and tell us what that looks like.
sure, this would be the annual bills, so not I believe it's billed quarterly, so divide this by 4, and that would be what you would be paying, you see them. If your bill is roughly $1,057, it would go up to $1,157 next year. Or sorry, that's this year. With the current rate increase for 2024, the last half of the year. And then in next year would be 1,267, followed by 1,375 in 2026. 1,478 and 27, and then it would start to trail off the increase as a percentage to only go up to 1,508 and 2028 and 1,538 in 2029. So, and then the annual increase year over year is also broken out in the next line. And the percentage is a year over year percentage, so from the previous year.
This is water and sewer.
And this is the water and sewer combined, yes. Both the fixed and the consumption, assuming this 7,400 cubic feet per year.
And this next slide will actually go a little bit further into the actual recommended alternative that we're looking
Yeah. So this calculates out all the dollars to match what we were assuming based on the rate, the revenue requirements. Surplus. Balance. And do you want to go through all this whole thing, or do you just want to point out specific things?
at. Figure there's something to highlight on here.
I don't think there
I
is.
think we've pretty
I
much
think
covered
it's
a lot.
like the main point is the percent increase that I think people would care about.
Right.
This is available if you want to dig into the numbers, feel free. It's publicly available.
So you said it was 10 years since the last rate increase.
I think we're
Yeah.
we're 8 to 10, right?
Right, we thought about 2015.
Was it 15? Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was 18 or 15.
Pretty sure it's 15.
Okay.
Actually, so you could have gotten the ordinance if you wanted, but it's pretty, around that time.
9-10 years.
Yeah.
And when were the water meters replaced? How long ago?
I'm sorry,
When the water meters played well, we're in the process of almost completing
about
that.
6 years ago, we started.
Okay, so the whole town is not done yet.
Well, we have under 100 that
Oh, okay.
still need to be.
It's
converted.
holdouts.
Yeah,
We're working on that.
It was voluntary.
We're
Yeah,
just-
and then there were some pipe issues, because then it came to my house, my pipes were so bad in my basement that they had to like do more work. Yeah.
Those are outliers, but we have some other
But
people
no,
that
they're
are
replaced now.
good. But there are some people that we're trying to get on board, and we discussed that today with Doug. He's gonna work on that too. And then we're gonna come up with possible kind of penalty or something. We just really want to get everybody in within the meters.
So the outlier, you're just saying now, is that what's happening?
They have different issues.
Okay,
Some of
got it.
them don't want to give access. Some of them really do have real issues that they want to work on.
Okay.
Brian, was there anything you wanted to add? I wanted to give you an opportunity.
No, I think that was pretty well stated. Like Steve said here, in addition to looking at the percent increases, one of the things is it's smoothed out over the first couple of years just with the use of surplus, but then this approach puts in enough money that gives the borough utilities a reasonable surplus over time, over the 5-year period.
Jacqueline, did you want to?
No, I think
Good.
I think really the questions, because I know it's complicated, right? It's a lot of numbers.
Looking forward to my next bill to see how much water I use. I have no idea.
Well, now you can revert back and say, okay, this is what it's gonna look.
Is your billing, does it say gallons on it or does it say 100 cubic feet?
It's gallons, everything's gallons.
Yeah.
That's a little, we try to translate that. But you could
It's supposed to be a joke.
call our office and we can tell you.
Oh, no, it's not, I'm gonna be curious now, because I never looked at it very closely.
I assume this
Driving
capital
back.
plan is available on the town website, so any resident can look at it.
So we've been discussing this, this technically still is a draft of our capital plan. A lot of this was based on this discussion too, because we may have a capital plan, but if we're not able to fund it, we have to put a couple things in place, a couple discussions had to be had first. But yes, the capital improvement plan is absolutely going to be available once we feel comfortable that we're going in a direction that makes the most sense, because it may have to be tailored otherwise.
Yeah, I can certainly provide it to you and you can, and then the
Yep.
council can decide whether we should change the word draft to final, and then we can.
So the capital plan, I assume, is basically maintaining the system we have, replacing pipes that need to be replaced, pumps, water mains or
All infrastructure,
wells.
yes.
Yes,
So we have reliable,
And
high quality water and rest.
and it even gets into all of the regulatory requirements and explains how often you have to maintain the wells, what you have, what months you purchase and why.
Permitting, right?
Yeah, it
Permitting.
gets into all of that. I'll be excited if people read it, because I've been trying to get everybody to like read it, because I think it's really good to understand, those
Don't
cycles.
over talk it too much. It's not that exciting.
It's not that exciting. It's exciting if you're an engineer.
You're right.
I'll enjoy reading.
I will say Ingenuity did a tremendous job pulling in, well, and CDM, right, of course, but Ingenuity was the facilitator of pulling all the information together, meeting with our entire staff, meeting with the other engineers that the borough works with. I mean, those aren't always easy conversations to have. And Ingenuity did a tremendous job pulling all those things together to make sure that we had a comprehensive look at our infrastructure to really make some informed decisions, which by presenting this today, bringing, the actual decision-making process to the forefront, we're doing that. And I think it's truthfully, this is going to be a major step in what the borough has done in the past, 8 to 10 years, because the answer to that is not much had been done. As far as in the last 8 to 10 years, when you have to be able to fund things to get things done.
Correct.
We have an aging infrastructure. Since January of being the borough manager, I've seen that in action. I've seen that aging infrastructure bite us. I've seen that come to fruition a couple times now, where we have some problems that we have to deal with. And it's really important to start fiscally putting your money where your mouth is. And, we want to say we want to get these things done for our residents. We want to make sure that our infrastructure is sound and solid. But how do you do that? You have to fund it, and we always look for alternative ways. We're always exploring grants to get projects done. We've been very successful with getting grants. Ingenuity's been very successful working with our grant writer to make sure that we're securing money. You've been instrumental in securing a ton of money for the lead service line project. And, I'm privy to several emails weekly about how Jacqueline is dealing with the DEP to make sure that we're staying on track and on schedule with our lead service line replacement. It's not an easy task when you're dealing with multiple agencies. So a lot of things are in motion right now. This is a critical part of making sure that the rest of this is seen through for the next 10 years.
We appreciate it. We appreciate that.
Well, I think it's easy to be short-sighted, right?
Yeah.
It's very easy to be
Right.
short-sighted. It's easy to sit back and kind of go, it's not going to be my problem, or that's not going to be in my term, right? Or that's a problem for somebody else to deal with. We could all think that way, but
We really can't anymore.
You
That's the
can't.
problem.
that's
Actually,
where we
we've
are.
thought about that way for a decade,
Yeah.
and now we can't think that anyway. We physically can't.
Right.
We're gonna lose our utility.
Yeah,
Sure.
infrastructure. I've been to places with no infrastructure. You don't want to be there.
Exactly.
So that has to be paid for by something. That's the way it goes. Prioritize it.
So I did want to open it up. I know we scheduled a 5 to 6 time period here. We breezed through that. I think that we comprehensively talked about the various alternatives and why we're here having this meeting. But we have a couple people online, and obviously some here with us today. So I just wanted to make sure that if anybody had any questions, that we make sure we get those answered. And if not, so be it.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
This is Councilman Forrest. So how often does this body meet? Is it like a utility committee here that meets? You know, I'm a relatively new councilman, so I don't know all the. You know, this is discussed much at council meetings, so that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, so we haven't, we don't have a utility committee, but what we've done is we've met, probably, I don't know, a handful of times now between, as far as I can speak from January on, a handful of times between myself, Tom, and Shleisha. We've had, Terrence in on our meetings,
Bobby Holiday.
from DPU, Bobby Holiday, Jacqueline, CDM Smith, has been represented. And then when we started discussing the capital improvement plan and its effects on the water rates, specifically, we met with the mayor and deputy mayor to discuss what this informational session would look like for the public. And that's where we are right now, because this is truly the culmination of that April 2023 water and sewer rate study is where we are today right now.
Right, and in the future, we'll be dealing with this when we setting up the budgets for 2025. We'll have the water sewer capital budget, and that will all be discussed in budget sessions when we know what projects we want to do after we get the plan in place. So we're gonna have that go right in that, and that can project out for 5 or 6 years also.
So how many customers, water customers are in that Red Bank approximately? And I'm interested also knowing in how many employees are, I don't know if it's broken out by people who are working on water services or not. Do we have employees that are just, because I do see a water utility truck around.
Yeah, we have, we have a water operator who's a part-time water operator with us. I think, Tom's been with the borough for.
A little over a year and a half.
Tom Branch.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty more
Not
than
you.
that.
You want to be the water operator now?
No,
CFO.
I
I don't know if I want you treating our water too.
My big contribution.
Yeah.
They call me a tall glass of water.
That you are. But Tom Branch is our water operator. Tom's part-time. I think he's been with the borough for
A number of years.
15 plus years. So he's very familiar with our water system. Bobby Holiday's obviously been with the borough for 30 years. And then we have skilled workers that assist with our infrastructure, pump repairs, treatment of the water. So we have a handful of employees there. We're actually looking to bring another one on board to fill a vacancy that we had. I believe that offer was just made yesterday to a potential candidate. And then we have other members of the borough, like we talked about before, myself, Tom, people that administratively have the impacts on the utility that come out of that budget as well.
Are there any plans to train a new licensed water operator besides Tom Branch?
Absolutely.
Great.
We have been talking about that. It's just it's a tough market for water operators. It's a tough market for finding licensed individuals to.
Is there anybody we could train to become?
We've also thrown that interest out there as well. The new candidate that we have coming in, there is that expectation that within a year that they're signed up for classes, that they're going to classes, that they're becoming certified. The water licenses, the W1s, I believe for our system, you have to have 2s. The level 2 licenses, W2s, T2s, which is treatment. And then you have Cs, which is collection. There's certain levels that they have to attain. And, we're going to be moving our staff in that direction.
Be great. Mentoring's very important.
Absolutely.
People move on and retire, as we know.
And we don't want that that knowledge to go with them.
Huge knowledge base, right?
Absolutely.
I think it was what, 3,800? I know your other question was how many customers?
Oh, yes.
About 4,500.
4,500. And I have another question. So how are we at collections and things like that around the water rates?
Over 98% of what we bill.
Very good.
That's a really good rate, yeah.
And the remaining 2% that don't pay go into the tax sale.
Okay, well, then you're getting it.
So the outside people pay for it on their behalf.
Do we know what the average water bill is for a resident? I know it's different probably for businesses.
So it is really,
Yeah.
you can't really generalize it because it really depends on your usage.
Even the difference probably between the people sitting in this room.
Yeah.
Is probably very big.
Right, family size.
Yes. Two people.
Yeah.
One person. Businesses, they use a lot more.
Right.
Yes.
I don't have any questions online.
No questions.
No, if anybody else has,
I guess I'll just, sorry, it's Kate. I just want to say thank you
Yeah, thanks.
for the in-depth work that you did. When I was first alerted to this about there being an increase, I got very nervous. But then hearing what those numbers actually looked like quarterly, I felt a little bit of relief, especially considering that everything was brought into consideration with the capital improvements, with the maintenance of the system, with us keeping our own utility, which is something that's extremely important to not only myself, but the entire governing body. We do not want to privatize our water.
Correct.
In Red Bank. So it's wonderful to have a transparent conversation as well about, making sure those positions are being filled, making sure that we're putting ourselves, on a track for success. It was very upsetting for me to hear that this had not been addressed in a
Yes.
decade. If there had been slight increases over time or maybe some sort of foresight, it would have, not shook me as much at first. But like I said, once I started hearing the numbers and once I started hearing about, the positive side of this, which is that we know we're planning ahead properly and how much we're gonna get, out of that, I started to feel a lot better. So, just such amazing thorough work. I totally understand why you want people to read it. I would feel the exact same way if I produced a document like that. So thank you so much for your service to the town, and we're really, really lucky to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I do appreciate it.
If you really wanted to find out what the bills are, let's just say you can go on our website, on the Red Bank's website, put on your account number, and then go to the next one. You see what your neighbor, you can see how much water they're using, so it could be very different than
Yeah.
yours, or it could be similar, depending on how many people are there.
Yeah.
I do realize I came in a little bit late, but when you're looking at all these changes, what efficiencies do they make for our water supply and our water delivery? Is there any improved technology or anything along those lines that are coming your way?
Yeah, I mean, I think the meters actually have a
meters-
huge
The meters
efficiency.
are great, right?
Yes, we can read them from our computer.
Yeah,
We can even pinpoint monthly, weekly, daily, or even hourly. I can tell how much water you're using between 3 hours. If I wanted to.
We're gonna look at water.
It's really amazing. I know, we're not gonna take a shower.
I was gonna say,
And Bobby called me to say, you're running an awful lot. of water.
yeah, we can identify issues.
Yeah,
okay.
Right.
Yeah.
and there are trigger points where they do denote usage over a norm for a household where the case.
Talk about service. I mean, talk about service, I know, right?
We get alerts.
He was so
every
excited
morning.
about it. Can we
Okay,
come in?
we get alerts,
Who
if
said
there
that
is
to
a
you?
constant flow where
Yes,
it shouldn't be,
yes,
then that triggers our
An
generic letter. We
right.
just let people know that there is something.
There's something going on.
Like
We
leaky
take a look at it.
faucet or something like
Yes.
that, or
Yeah,
that's
something.
wonderful.
That's wonderful, that's great.
So before
Shorten your
you-
shower.
Yeah, sure. Tell your teenager to get out of the shower.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but it used to be someone had to go out there and physically read it.
Yes, and they would find
That's
out
great.
way too late when the billing was done, then it's too late.
Yes.
You find it out right away, so
That's
you can
great.
take care of it before your bill comes.
And has Red Bank been 100% converted to these new meters?
No, she said.
Oh, no, okay.
There's the outliers.
We said we have about 100 services. that we-
And you can see when we talk about it, why, like some people just feel uncomfortable or there may be different
Somebody coming
reasons.
into their house to change the meter and.
Or there are legitimate reasons.
Yeah, there was a big thing in our house because the pipes were old. It took a while, but it's been done a couple of years now.
I think there's some special different size meters.
Yeah.
For those.
Yeah, they're gonna
cases.
come back with a special thing.
So how efficient is our system in terms of the sort of water? Now you have, especially with these electronic meters, do you know how much water we lose? I'm sure there's leakage in the system. What kind of condition is our system in? Do we have any clue?
I don't know if we've analyzed that in this project here.
Yeah, for the capital improvement, we didn't analyze the loss.
Maybe. a
We
good
did look
question
at the
for Bob.
age of your water mains. We looked at that. But we didn't look at,
Once
What?
all your meters are replaced, it's called non-revenue water usually.
Like, I mean,
So
you know how much water we're
That's
putting out.
exactly.
How much water is actually getting.
You know how much your treatment plant or wherever you buy it from. You buy some from American Water and you might take some up from a ground well, I don't know, but like, you know how much it's input into the system.
Right.
And then all the meters collected, combine that, and you just subtract and you can come up with some idea, but I don't know if that was done, but
yeah, so as soon as the meters are done, you're gonna be able to
Yeah.
do that.
and you have to account for certain
We do it
weird things
now.
happening, so it's not a dead on number, but you could see if you're missing like 20% of what you're putting out, there's something wrong.
Right.
And if you're missing 5, then it's actually probably really good and it's just something weird happening.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Certainly.
Appreciate taking the time.
No problem.
I usually ask questions. A general overarching question, all the money raised by the water utility goes back into the water utility, or does any of that go into the general fund of the budget? Ask that question.
In the last couple of years, money wasn't going over. This past year, there was decent closeout of operations, so there was a little going over to support our current operations. If we're having a deficit in operations in this water sewer fund, that would limit what we can move over to our general fund. So it's not based on what we're trying to do here is generate more money for our general fund, but if the result of efficient operations and efficient budget controls where we have extra money going back, we could possibly help our general fund. That's not our main goal here,
I would say it's not something that we're relying on.
not at all.
How much money from like last year for the
300,000.
water went into the general fund?
300,000.
And when we projected, we assumed that may continue.
Yeah, we.
So
hope
we assumed
that
that would
can
continue.
Because you do have people who say, oh, they didn't raise my taxes, but they raised my water rates. And I've seen that in other towns too.
Well, our taxes are not gonna go up as much, and we need to raise these rates to support our capital program. It's not because we're moving money over to the current that we will have to, we won't raise the rates as much. We need to raise the rates.
Anyone else?
Next, what happens when, with this recommendation, of course, to the council?
Correct.
I think next week, right?
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about, we actually have agenda setting meeting tomorrow. So we're gonna talk about the timing of this. Because as you saw with the July 1st projections, that's the timing that we're looking at.
So our cycle, talking with Ashleisha, would be July 13th, correct?
Yes.
With the way the cycles are set up. So we get this approved, everything's going a go. We'll have that into those cycles, which will not be even billed out till October. But that'll be the start of that next cycle, which we would have the new rate.
So people would see the initial or the first effect of this rate change in October.
No, anything that would be billed after July 13th would be based on the new rates.
But when is that bill?
They'll actually see the bill and pay the bill.
In October, I thought that's what you said.
No, the billing date would be whatever cycle comes up for the billing after July 13th, but there were several cycles,
Right, okay.
right? And so let's just say the ordinance gets passed and then let's say July 11th or something. Anything that gets billed after that will be at new rates.
But it's starting from July 13th.
Correct.
So if you're billing, you're saying, when is that next billing for that July 13th? Is that in August or September or October?
So
I
July
thought,
13 would be the billing date.
right, but there won't be any effect because that July 13th bill will not show any changes for the rate until after July 13th.
When do I get that bill?
I think you said it was October, but I'm maybe a little confused.
No, because anything that has been billed for the first three billings will not be affected because they're already billed and they're already due and they're already paid.
Right.
Anything, like each cycle has one more billing for 2024, which will be at the new rates.
Okay, right.
That's how it is. And
One
then
more.
one cycle there is only sewer.
Oh, sorry.
So which is NJ American customers. So we get the data from them.
Good. All right. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the questions. And thank you to Ingenuity and CDM.
Thank you.
Thank you.